Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm your host, Alan, and boy, I tell you, I'm excited about today's guest. We have with us in studio Uncle Henry, and he has been heard on Mobile area radio for years and years, and he's currently the host of the Uncle Henry Show on News Radio 710 WNTM. So, Uncle Henry, thanks for coming. I'm pumped about this episode.
Well, and I am excited to be invited to this type of show. I'm never interviewed about serious things ever. So this is the first time ever I've been interviewed about something serious.
Well, Uncle Henry, this is the first also because Playing Above the Line is one of the platforms that we are on is iHeartradio, and your station is owned by iHeartradio, and Uncle Henry's podcast is also on iHeartradio. So we have a little something in common.
So this podcast is on the iHeartradio app.
Yes, there you go.
Just like I'm on the iHeartradio app.
There you go.
So you're effectively equal to me on that app.
Well, I think that we can both be found on that app, but I don't think that we need to use the word equal and when we're talking about what I do and what you do, because that is definitely not the case.
Okay, in this case, I'll let you lead me.
Okay, we'll try that and see what happens. So the overarching theme of Playing Above the Line is leadership and entrepreneurship. So let me just start by asking you a very simple question. What's your view on leadership? How do you define a leader?
For me, leadership is someone who guides toward a goal, someone not necessarily who orders you to do things, but someone who guides you toward a goal and, more importantly, gets you to buy in and really want to achieve that goal. Not just because you're getting a check or something like that, because you are generally invested. They not only guide you in the right direction, point you in the right direction, help you find the tools to get there, but also get you to buy in.
So when we talk about leader, is a leader born or made?
I think leaders can be made, but it's not a formula where you can sit down and take a class probably and learn to be a leader. It really has to do with your own journey and reach a lot of these realizations on your own through that journey. You can be helped by being mentored and things like that, but I think some people have a natural charisma where you could say they're a born leader, but you can still pick up the skills along the way just by being self-aware and observing the world around you.
So you've been in radio since 1984 in Mobile, but now is that where your radio career started, or was it?
My radio career did start in the Mobile Bay area in 1984.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a long time, and I don't know much about the radio business, but I have heard that you can deal with some doozies as far as folks in the radio business. I think that we all have experience, following leaders who are good leaders and people that we respect and that kind of thing. But how do you deal with those folks that may not be the best leader necessarily, that you have to kind of navigate those waters?
As far as dealing with a crazy boss, it's going to be the same across every profession, every type of business. You're going to have your best results by just keeping your nose to the grindstone. And if you understand what the goal is, then move toward that goal despite the craziness around you. I don't have any specific good advice on dealing with a crazy boss, because that can happen just about in any business.
Terrestrial radio, I think, has undergone a lot of changes over the past few years. I mean, there's always acquisitions and that kind of thing going on. So you've seen a lot of that, I'm sure, right?
Oh, yes. Okay. I have seen lots and lots of transitions going back to when I first got in the business. Radio got deregulated, meaning that it became much easier to buy radio stations. And this was thought of to be as a good thing, less government regulation, making it easier to buy a radio station. Maybe some people or groups who had not been represented in ownership before could be represented, like more minority owners and things like that. So I saw that where a lot of people jumped into the business and got into radio, had never been into radio before. That was a big change. And then 10, 15 years later, a lot of these people who had jumped into radio realized they did not know how to run radio stations. And so lots of radio stations started to fail all over the country, and the government further deregulated radio to make it so that you could own more than one AM and one FM in a town. The rule used to be that in any given city, you could only own one AM and one FM. But in order to help all these other radio stations survive and not shed employees, they loosened that rule so that you could now own numerous radio stations in one town. That led to the rise of corporate radio, that led to bigger companies buying smaller companies. That was a huge transition in our business. All while this is going on, we have technological advances that people saw, had difficulty seeing where it would end. We're still undergoing that right now. So yes, since I've been in radio, it has undergone constant change since 1984 up to now.
How have you navigated those waters then? Because I'm sure that those changes have had a direct impact on you through the years, I would imagine.
Well, on a personal level, it is just making sure that you are doing your job, that you're working hard, that you're connecting with listeners in some way. There's always a value in that. Mm-hmm. So as long as you are connecting with listeners and have that relationship, you're going to be fine in my business. And it may be that you have to leave one station and go to another, or leave one platform of media and go to another. But if you've built your brand and you have that relationship, people will come with you.
Right. So you've had a lot of success, obviously, with people who are avid, Uncle Henry listeners, and they followed you when you were, from when you were on 97.5 WABB back in the day to 95 KSJ, and now obviously you have your own show on 710 AM radio. So, I mean, why do you think you have such a loyal following?
I think I'm providing something that they're not getting anywhere else. I think it's a voice that is unique to our area. It's been somewhat consistent through the years. There are elements of what I do now that I can trace directly back to what I was doing on WABB, for an example, in the late 80s and early 90s. And once people are there with you, they know what they can get from me. I deliver it on a consistent basis. Consistency counts in most businesses. So the fact that I'm there and I'm providing the same product, more or less, with some changes through the years, that's probably why. I often sit around, though, and I wonder, what are these people, why are they still, what's going on? Why are they listening to me?
Yeah.
So every now and again, I do think that, but it has to be consistency of performance through the years.
Well, and one of the things that you mentioned when we just kind of asked folks to give us 2 or 3 bullet points of what you consider makes a good leader. And one of the things that you mentioned was transparency and honesty. And so I've got to think that your listeners appreciate the fact that you're honest with them, right? I mean, they will know where you stand on particular issues, correct?
I'm not so sure if that's the case. I think they know what to expect. They know that I'm probably going to look for the weirdest angle possible on any story.
Okay.
When I talk about transparency, I can just think of the different times that I've worked in various radio businesses that had times of crisis, that the way our leaders were able to get everybody moving in the same direction and keep the boat afloat was by being transparent and telling us all. The worst thing somebody can do when they're trying to lead is to BS the people they're trying to lead. And so, especially in a time of crisis, being transparent and honest about what's going on will cause the people you're leading to buy in on the goal and stick with you.
Why do you think people have a hesitancy to be honest and transparent in those type situations? Do you think that folks are just afraid that if they know the real story, they're going to start jumping ship, and they don't have enough faith in their team to?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure of. Some of it may be habit. I'll tell you that about 5 years ago, we got a new general manager, and I mean holding your cards close to your vest as being a habit. Mm-hmm. We had a general manager come in 5 years ago that did something that we had never seen before, and that is we would have big meetings where he would project all of our financials on a screen and say, this is where we are, this is where we were last year, this is where we are now, this is what each station is doing, this is where we project to be next year, this is where, if we keep up what we're doing, we'll be in 10 years. It was constant transparency. He told us he didn't care if we took that information out the doors and showed it to all of our competitors in town. He believed in the transparency that much. It just leads to trust of the leader when you're that transparent. As to why people are not transparent, maybe they're not as confident of their own goals.
Okay.
That's just me speculating on why they might not want to be transparent.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair statement. So kind of dovetailing in with that, you mentioned this particular general manager, posting the financials or whatever else on the wall for everybody to see. Clarity of mission, you say, is very important. Vision.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important for your team to know the vision?
Well, how can you all get together on the same page if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the goal is? I mean, you've got to have clarity about where you're going and how you're going to get there. Or even if you don't know how you're going to get there, you've got to have clarity about what the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just not going to get that buy-in from people.
Emotional intelligence. I think this is the first time that particular phrase has shown up on the podcast. We've done 60-something episodes. I think it's a good concept. So explain, what does that mean to you, and then why do you think that's important in a leader and your team?
Well, my interpretation of emotional intelligence is that somebody has a basic understanding of emotions, about how emotions often lead into motivation, that one employee might be motivated in a completely different way than another, and you've got to learn these things about your employees. That is a form of emotional intelligence. Knowing those ins and outs make it a lot easier for someone to lead. Setting the right tone, showing people the proper respect, all those things I think tie into emotional intelligence in the workplace. And it's ever more important now because we seem to have a society where people are a little bit more triggered than they used to be by things. Human resources is maybe the big. When I interview, I also get a chance to interview a lot of people that run their own businesses.
Okay.
And one of the big things that keeps coming up when I interview business people is that they know how to make whatever it is they make, or they know how to provide whatever services it is. The one thing they didn't prepare for when they got into business was human resources and learning how to navigate human resources in the modern workplace. That all ties into emotional intelligence. If you don't have a lot of experience with emotional intelligence, maybe you don't have a high emotional IQ, you can go in and by accident alienate your coworkers, the people you're trying to lead.
Yeah. So you've interviewed a lot of business owners. What are a couple of common threads that you have picked up on? And you can, whether you knew them personally or whatever, you can kind of tell the ones that are successful and kind of have it going on, and maybe those that are struggling a little bit. So the ones that are successful, can you point to a trait or two that you picked up on through your interviews that have kind of made them that way?
It's a cliche to say it, but hard work would be number one. People who don't look at the watch or not watching the clock, that they're going to do the task no matter the time frame. People that are willing to put in the hard work. That would have to be number one. Anybody that has their own business understands that there's not a clock you can punch. I mean, sometimes it's a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week proposition at first, especially.
Right.
So work ethic would be number one, and then tying into clarity of vision and knowing what the goal is going to be. If you can pull that together, then you're ahead of so many other people.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a minute. This pains me to ask this question, and I, full disclosure, so I've got my Auburn pullover today on.
I noticed that.
We're in Deep Fried Studios. Got the nice orange walls, and my navy blue I think pops really nicely against the walls. So, but you've got your Alabama Crimson Tide elephant button on over there.
That is true. Yes,
that is true.
Yes,
so,
I do. Roll Tide.
So we ask about a leader that you admire, and Nick Saban, in all caps, by the way.
Of course,
in all caps. Nick Saban! Exclamation
he deserves it. He deserves all capital letters.
Tell me about Nick and what you see in him.
As far as a leader goes,
oh yeah.
Well, he's been very transparent and very honest in explaining that he's got a process. That if you want to win national championships, and he can show that he's won them on numerous occasions.
Sure, he has. Yeah.
So if you want to win, he's got it all laid out for you. That if you do this, and if you do this and handle these small details every day, then the end result is we are going to win championships. And he can show you step by step how to get there. There aren't a lot of people in our society that have a process like that they can say this works. All you've got to do is come on board. I've shown you the path. Let's go on this path together, and I'll help you achieve your goal. Whether the player's goal is to win a championship or the player's goal is to be highly drafted in the NFL, he's got it all laid out for him.
Right.
So it has to do with pulling all of that together in a process. That's something that we can all try to learn from in our own businesses.
Now, I don't think Nick listens to this podcast. He might, and if he does,
he doesn't have time. It doesn't fit the process.
Well, okay, fine. But if he does, Nick, I apologize. I'm about to ask this question, but he can be kind of ornery sometimes, right? I mean, you see his press conferences and stuff, and he can be a little testy.
Well, see, now that's your interpretation as an Auburn fan. Now I see it as being kind. He could easily let a stupid question just slide. But what he's trying to do is coach up the reporter. When a reporter asks a stupid question, instead of dismissing it as being a moronic question, he is coaching them up and trying to get to show them how to ask a better question in the future. Now, people will ask stupid questions. He'll illustrate that it was a stupid question. Then he'll go on to answer it in a very intelligent way. He is coaching up the reporters, and we all need to be coached up.
I can appreciate your angle on that. I thought it was precious this not too long ago. He was giving lessons on how to do math to a reporter.
Well, the reporter didn't do his research before he showed up at the dadgum press conference. He should have known the answer to his question before he asked it. Nick Saban pointed out the silliness of it all. And the end result is going to be the next time that reporter shows up, he's going to know what he's asking about ahead of time.
Well, I can't argue with that. Tough love, I guess, is maybe what we're talking about here.
Maybe
right?
a little.
Yeah,
a little. I consider it coaching. Yeah.
Very good. So the Uncle Henry show is going into its 18th year. What do you attest the longevity to? I mean, we've probably kind of touched on bits and pieces of it, but I would think that 18 years and with one station, with one show, that's a good run.
It is a very good run for me.
What do you attest that to?
I'm not exactly sure. As I mentioned to you earlier, I think some of it has to do with the consistency of what I've done. Another thing is that if people are really interested in Mobile and Baldwin County in the state of Alabama, they know that that's what I'm going to talk about, that even though we live through very interesting times on the national and international level, if they want to hear about something weird like people throwing slices of cheese off Mardi Gras floats, I'm going to be the one that tells them about the weird stuff in Mobile. So it's probably the fact that I'm hyper-local on the program.
Can you point to maybe a mentor or someone that's had an impact on your life? Or have you had anyone in your profession that's really been that for you?
The people that have influenced me the most in my profession have been the people that I've worked with closely on a day-to-day basis. Many of them have not been supervisors or bosses or leaders. They have led by example. They have been the people. I've got a quality that isn't always a good quality, and it is that I often pick up the characteristics of the people I work with closely.
Okay.
If I'm working with somebody closely on a daily basis for 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 years, I am, for better or worse, going to pick up characteristics from that person. And I've been very blessed that some of the people I've worked alongside with in the past and currently, people like Paul Fuller of WABB, Dan Brennan of 95 KSJ, Mary Booth of Mix 99.9. I've worked alongside people that had high standards, and working alongside people with a strong work ethic and high standards led me even subconsciously. So I would say that not necessarily mentors, but people who led me by their good examples. Those are the people that really helped me in my career without even realizing they were helping me.
I think that goes back to the old adage, you never know who's watching, and not necessarily in this specific case, but I mean, I think it kind of connotates that, your people are always having an influence on you regardless of whether they really know it or not.
Right, and we see it tremendously in families. We see it with kids who watch their parents. It's the same in the workplace. It's the same in your social life. Mm-hmm. You see, there have been studies that people that have overweight friends tend to gain weight. People that have thin friends that are running tend to lose weight. We pick up the characteristics of the people that we spend time with.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you a big reader?
I read more than I've ever read in my life, but less books and more online. I seem to always have a tablet or a computer screen fired up, so it's not as deep. The reading isn't as deep, but it's far more wide. So yes, I do read a lot, but I don't read a lot of actual books as much as I read things online.
Okay. Well, can you point to what are a couple of your go-to sources as far as your online reading, where you get your information? You mentioned the reactionary society and that kind of thing. Just give me your take on society today. If someone from Mars landed an alien and said, Uncle Henry, tell me about the society in the States today, what would you tell them?
What would I tell an alien that wanted to know? Well, first of all, but let me say this. I don't believe in aliens from outer space.
Well, this is really more of a hypothetical.
I know it is, but I just want for the record, I don't believe in that. I think it's ridiculous. I think the idea that we talk about aliens from other planets or other dimensions is a waste of time. However, my reflection on modern society is this. I'm worried. We've got a set of young people. I was raised where I was taught all the good stuff about the United States, and they left out a lot of the bad. And that's not good. But now we've kind of flipped the script, and a lot of young people are taught the bad about the United States, and they're not being taught the good in our history. And that has me worried because a lot of young people disrespect the institutions of the country, disrespect the Constitution itself. I come from a family that never really had a lot of good things to say about presidents, no matter what party they were. Right. They just didn't like the president, whoever it was. Okay. I'm talking about people disrespecting just the basics of our form of government, our economy. That all worries me, that people seem to be wanting to try out things that are new to them that haven't worked well in other parts of history and in other parts of the planet. You've asked me a question that's really over my head. You know, the fact that we can't disagree on something going on in the country and have an intelligent conversation with each other about it. We can't try to persuade each other anymore. Nowadays, it's about attacking each other. And I do wish that people were more tolerant of hearing each other's persuasive arguments about things. Does any of that make sense to you? Or will you be cutting this out of your podcast in a capricious edit?
No, we're really at the mercy of Johnny, Editor Johnny, on that one. I don't think he's going to cut it, but I'll tell you, I agree. Everything is so contentious now. I mean, you can't have a civil conversation with someone who doesn't have your same political beliefs, your same social beliefs or whatever. But back in the day, you hear stories of when Ronald Reagan was the president and Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House.
Right.
They would go at it like dogs and cats from 8 to 5, but then they go have a drink at the Capitol bar when they got done talking about politics.
Right.
I mean, could you see Pelosi and Trump going to have a drink now? I don't think so.
Well, the sad thing is that you're not seeing people in the same neighborhood willing to do that. The temperature has gotten so high. And I go back to the word persuasion. You know, our system of government is set up that if you can persuade enough people to agree with you, you can change the Constitution itself with an amendment. If you can persuade enough people, we are not in the business of persuading each other anymore. We're looking for some type of argument or some rhetorical flourish that'll make us seem cool on Twitter or something like that. And the art of persuasion has vanished. Think maybe somebody could stand up and give a speech that could sway a crowd or give a speech in Congress that could sway a vote. And those days seem to be gone. Eloquence is lost in this era, and nobody is willing to be persuaded or at least be willing to consider the opposite argument. That worries me for where we go, because where do you go from there other than something even worse? And I hate to see that.
But I think overall it's a challenge for people who lead. There is that mindset that nobody can have a different idea or opinion than me and us get along and, even work in the same space or whatever.
Well, we want to know whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? And if I don't hear the side I want to hear, then I'm going to disregard everything that I hear coming out of your mouth. Yeah. I think that's dangerous.
No, absolutely it is. One last question. You've interviewed, I would imagine, a lot of people over the history of your show. Do you have a dream guest? Number one, is there someone that you would just you're like, this is a pinnacle? If I could get this person on, that'd be great. Or is there one person, one guest, prior guest that you can point out to that really stood out and made a lasting impression on you?
Of course, the answer to the pinnacle guest, and that would be, of course, Coach Saban. To be able to interview him and people around him in his circle, that would be the pinnacle guest. My favorite interviews have not been with politicians, have not been with famous people. I've enjoyed more talking to just average people, just people sharing their own observations. And I've gotten to do that for years from people calling into the show. I just saw a guy outside of here walking his dog and wondered about what is going on in his life that he can walk a dog at 10-something in the morning. Yeah, I'd rather talk to that guy than interview a candidate for office, for example.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Very good. Uncle Henry, thank you so much for coming. We'll link your social media in the notes below, in show notes. But if people want to find out more about the Uncle Henry Show, they can go to www.newsradio710.com. That's 710.com, and see more about what you do. So, Uncle Henry, thanks for joining us. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. I thought you were going to ask me about leadership.
Well, I mean,
we've talked about UFOs and aliens, and how did you explain the world to an alien? I mean, this was kind of unexpected.
All esoteric things, though. All esoteric things.
Okay.
Yeah, been good. Thanks.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. As always, a big thanks to producer Carrie Wolf and editor Johnny Gwynn. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.